This is Rhonda from the I'll Walk With You podcast. Our guest for this episode is Dr. Ben Schilaty. Ben is a social work professor at Utah Valley University. He also works part-time as a therapist specializing in working with LGBTQ Latter-Day Saints and their families. He holds 3 degrees from Brigham Young University and earned a PhD from the University of Arizona. He is an award-winning author of A Walk in My Shoes, Questions I Am Often Asked as a Gay Latter-day Saint, and co-hosted the podcast All Out in the Open. I had the opportunity to hear Ben speak at a fireside in the fall of 2024 and instantly felt of his goodness. Later that fall, Dakota and I had the opportunity to hear him speak at the Gather Conference in Provo, Utah. We were honored when Ben agreed to be a guest on our podcast, and we absolutely enjoyed our conversation with him. He has such a beautiful outlook on life and truly makes this world a better place. Thank you again, Ben, for being our guest, and thank you to all of our listeners. We truly believe you will enjoy this episode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us once again with I'll Walk With You, where we have conversations about how we can be more unified on our walk through life together. My name is Dakota Moses.
I'm Rhonda Monson. We're very excited to have Ben with us. Ben, I always mispronounce your last name, so you're going to have to say it for me.
What's your best guess?
Oh, please don't make me. I'm horrible with names. This is why I never wanted to be a teacher, because then I would just butcher children's names and make them cry.
That's okay. It's Schilaty. It kind of rhymes with beef patty.
Okay, Schilaty with beef patty. Great. Awesome. We're truly privileged to have you join us today. I first really heard about you. I kind of am embarrassed because you've been out there and doing a lot of good things and being a voice for people for years. But I first saw you actually at a fireside that you did with Richard Osler in Provo, Utah. And my husband and I were on a mission. We hadn't been sent yet to Kenya. And we had the opportunity to go to this fireside, and I loved it, and I loved what you had to share. And from then on, I friended you, and now I follow you. And I'm kind of a stalker that way. So
What fun.
I have loved the things that you have shared, and was so excited that you agreed to be a part of this podcast that Dakota and I are doing. I feel like you're a perfect guest for it because you are a gay member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And you are, as we say in the church, you are walking the covenant path. And yet you do this podcast with Charlie Bird, who also I would love to one day have with him and his husband on our podcast, who is gay and married to his husband. So you are celibate, and Charlie is gay, married to his husband. And I think that's such a unique combination, which I personally love so much. A little background for me. I've known people involved with Evergreen when it was Evergreen before it was North Star years ago. And so I actually got to help pick the name for North Star. I don't know if you knew this.
Oh,
So
cool.
my ex-husband, Dakota's dad, and I actually got to help choose that name. And so I love North Star. I love the work that North Star does. And I feel like North Star doesn't give a place for people who aren't choosing a celibate or an opposite sexual orientation marriage.
Mhm.
They don't provide I don't know if safe is the word, but it's not really a place for people like Dakota, who's married to his husband. And so I love that you and Charlie show, hey, we can do this walk. We can be friends and share. And I don't know. I'm rambling, but I really do appreciate where you're at. And Dakota actually came down and we went to the Gather conference, not this last year, but the year before that. And it was amazing.
Wonderful.
Because the space was so inclusive with
Mhm.
everybody, no matter where your walk is, which we feel like ties in really beautifully with what we're hoping to create here with this podcast.
Love it. Wonderful.
I hope that was an okay introduction.
Ben, how would you like to introduce yourself as well? I'll give you that
Well,
opportunity.
Well, like I said, my name is Ben Schilaty. My last name is Lebanese. It's anglicized Arabic, so I'm a quarter Lebanese. Most people don't know that, but you can see it in my nose. I have a Lebanese nose and Arabic last name, which is weird because I'm super duper white. Um, yeah, because most of my ancestors are from England and Germany. Anyway, but I am a gay Latter-day Saint. I currently work at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah, as a social work professor. That's my full-time job. I also work part-time as a therapist. I see mostly LGBTQ clients and a couple parents of LGBTQ kiddos, working to reconcile their faith and their orientation. And that is super duper fun. I love doing that. I also used to be a Spanish teacher. I taught Spanish for a decade at like middle school, high school, college levels. So that feels like a whole other life ago. And I had a different career where I worked in the administration at Brigham Young University for 4 years. And that was a blast as well. I wrote a book called, I was going to say, I'll Walk With You. It's A Walk in My Shoe. That's the book I wrote. It's called, we love walking in this space. But it's called A Walk in My Shoes, Questions I'm Often Asked as a Gay Latter-day Saint, published by Deseret Book. Each chapter focuses on a question I get asked, and I answer the question with stories from my life and from the scriptures. And it's actually pretty funny. Like I reread it for the first time since it was published this past summer, and I was like laughing and crying. I was like, man, I did a good job. And then I also have co-hosted a podcast with my friend Charlie Bird. It initially was called Questions from the Closet, and then we rebranded to All Out in the Open when we brought in some other hosts to host the podcast as well. And that podcast is currently on a break, and I don't know what we'll do with that going forward, but all the episodes exist online and they're great. I also one of the co-founders of the Gather Conference, which offers Christ-centered support for LGBTQ Latter-day Saints and those who love them. And like you said, Rhonda, North Star focuses on people who are active in the church, on the covenant path, and Gather is just for people, wherever they are in their journey who want to connect with Christ, and also connect with the community. And so there are people who are active in the church. I would say most people who attend Gather are active in some way, but some people are in same-sex marriages, some are in mixed orientation marriages, some are single like me. And there are also lots of parents and family members who come, and just like friends and allies and church leaders. So it's a ton of fun. I love Gather.
The one conference we went to was amazing. I loved it. I'm super excited. The next one's in November. We'll even put the dates, location on our notes for this podcast because Gather is worth going to.
Wonderful.
Even from Spokane, Washington, or somewhere else in the United States, it's worth getting in your car, or getting in a plane, and going to. It is truly one of the most inclusive gatherings, which is a great name for it, that I've been to.
Awesome.
I loved it. And I was
did
so
too.
glad that we got to go together. That was so
Absolutely.
special.
Absolutely. Well, Ben, I'm really curious. I would love to hear some about like what your upbringing was like and what it was like being you as a child, as a youth, young adult. I would love to hear a little bit more of your backstory of what makes you Ben Schilaty.
Great. One thing you should know about me and my personality is I'm like an eternal optimist. If I have a bad day when I go to bed, I wake up in the morning, I'm happy again. Like I'm just like a generally like happy, optimistic person, which is great. And so when I look back on my past, I also look back on it with this optimistic lens. So when I think about my growing up years, I just remember being pretty idyllic. Like I had two parents who loved me. I'm the youngest of four kids. I grew up in Everett, Washington. And I grew up really near the ocean. Well, it's technically Puget Sound, but just minutes from the beach. And so I would ride my bike to the beach all the time. We had a forest in our backyard. My parents are both really calm people. Like there was no fighting. It was just like I grew up in a really safe, like secure environment. But I'm 41 now, so I was a kid and a teen in the 90s and the early 2000s. And back then, it like no one was openly gay hardly. Like, and if they were, it was like a joke, or they were someone that was like to be avoided. But since I grew up in the Seattle area, it was a little more accepting. But still, like there were hardly any openly gay people in my high school. But my next door neighbor, when I was growing up, her name was Karen, and she was gay and had partners off and on. And I saw the way that my parents were loving and kind to her. And I knew that if they were that kind to her, they would at least be that kind to me. So when it came time for me to come out to them in my 20s, I wasn't scared about them rejecting me because I knew that they would be kind to me. As far as like being gay goes, I didn't realize that I was attracted to men. I don't think I was until I was about 11 years old when puberty set in. But like I said, this was a time where being gay just wasn't okay. And so I just assumed I would go on my mission and that would fix me. So I lived in a state of denial about it until I was 21 years old when I got home from my mission. And then when I got home, I was like, oh shoot, that mission thing didn't work. Now it's time to like actually get to work to change this. And that's when I started praying to be straight and fasting to be straight and going on dates with women and just like trying to do everything I could to change my orientation. But my teen years, or like my teen years, my early childhood years, just honestly to me, looking back, just feel pretty idyllic.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. I love that your parents showed you by example how they treated your neighbor.
Mhm. Yeah. One of the things I say to people a lot is we need to let people catch us being kind to LGBTQ people because we all have this mental filing cabinet where we keep track of what people have said about LGBTQ people. And so if we fill up someone's mental filing cabinet with like good things, then they're going to trust us.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful.
How has your parents' example and your own optimistic outlook, how has that influenced your work with your clients, with your students, with your writing? How has that influenced it?
Yeah, there was a really interesting general conference talk from the most recent general conference, and it was about I can't remember who gave it, but it was about like different degrees of difficulty. And the speaker, I can't remember her name, started out with a story about like this 100-year-old man who ran a marathon, I think, and he came in last place, but because of his age, he actually had like broken a world record. So even though it looked like he was last, he'd actually like done this amazing thing. And she talked about how the Lord looks on our like the level of difficulty because not everyone's life is the same. And the truth is, my life has been really easy. Like if you were to like if you were to like deal out cards about like how hard and easy someone's life is, like I was dealt the easiest hand. Like my life is really easy. The only thing truly about my life that has been hard is my orientation and reconciling that with my faith. There have been other things like my mom had Alzheimer's and that was really sad. But for the most part, my life has been really easy. And so I feel like I have like a capacity to hold other people's pain because I don't relate to it. I didn't have abusive parents. I didn't experience a lot of bullying as a kid. And so I have a capacity to hold people's pain and their trauma because it's not something that I personally experience. And so I think that makes me really resilient as a therapist. And also, I think it gives me a clear picture about the way we treat LGBTQ people and how that affects them. Because truly, that is the only thing in my life that has been that like marginalizes me. And so I can see how like when I experience feelings of passive suicidal ideation, like I wish I could die, like I wish that I could just like go to sleep and not wake up because this has been so hard. I'm able to see like, well, that's because of this one thing. There isn't anything else complicating that. And with a lot of my clients, there's a lot of things to untangle. They're just not reconciling their faith and their orientation, but there are other things going on in their lives that are really hard too. And so I think that the relative ease of my life, like the lack of difficulty in a lot of ways, has made it easier to focus on the issues related to being LGBTQ in a conservative faith. Because I like this is an issue that like rises to the top when so many other things wouldn't for me.
Yeah. You did a post a while back about your experience working at Brigham Young University. I thought it was beautifully written and moved my heart so much that I'm like, leaned over to my husband. I'm like, you have to read this. Would you be willing to share some of your experiences being openly gay as far as your orientation goes and working at Brigham Young University, how that
Yeah,
was?
for sure. I'm not going to share like a lot of details just because. So the reason I wrote that post, I'd been away from BYU for more than a year and a half when I wrote that, And the reason I wrote it was because some articles had come out in the Salt Lake Tribune, I think, about some things at BYU that people found to be problematic. And then I heard, a lot of, rebuttals to that, which is like, oh, everything's fine. There are no problems. And so I started hearing like, well, there are no problems. And I was like, well, there are problems. Like it's an institution and every institution is going to have some problems. And so I felt like I just needed to share some stories about some experiences that I had had there. And I was very careful and very deliberate writing that post. I think I've worked on that post more than any other because I didn't want to come across as angry or bitter because I'm
It was
not.
beautiful. It was an
Yeah, thank
absolutely
you.
beautiful post.
Yeah, because like I truly love BYU. Like I have 3 degrees from there that I call my 3 degrees of glory. I live a block away from campus. Like even now, like I go walking on campus all the time. Like that campus, like that piece of earth feels like my home. Like I love it so much. But there were some things that happened, and most of them were positive. Like as a gay, as an openly gay person at BYU, I was treated with a lot of love and respect, and I was put to work and I feel like my perspective and my experiences were really valued by the people who knew me. And kind of the thesis of the post is that there were people there who didn't know me, who were worried about me, who thought that I might be a problem or cause problems. So the main thesis of the post is the people who knew me treated me really well and trusted me. The people who didn't know me mistrusted me. And I think that is kind of the core of the issue that we think that someone who is gay might tend to be unfaithful, or if they talk about their experiences in a way that brings up real issues, then we might be concerned about them because that's viewed as like being disloyal. And so that happened a couple of times where I would share some hard things and then I got reprimanded a couple times. One of the stories I share was I gave a fireside in a different state, like away from BYU, like I wasn't there to like I wasn't representing the university. I was just giving a fireside as a member of the church who happened to work at BYU. And in the fireside, someone asked a question. I don't remember what the question was, but the answer I gave was an answer I'd taken from something that a BYU religion professor had said in a paper that was published by BYU. And so I said that prophets aren't fax machines for God. He doesn't just put words in and then they come right out, but they're filtered through their own experience. And so I said that, and then someone in attendance wrote a letter to the president of BYU complaining about me. And so I was then called into a meeting where I was told at the beginning of the meeting, like, you are not in trouble. This is not a problem. We just want you to know that, like, you said this, someone complained about this, and you just be more careful about how you talk about this topic. And that if you're talking about prophets and apostles, make sure you know that you're testifying of them, and so not as to like spread any doubt. I was like, okay, understandable. But that was the kind of thing that happened. Like I had to be really careful what I said, and like a straight religion professor could say something, and no one cared. But if I said it, then it was a problem. And so that was just one example. When I started working at UVU, I was helping out on the new student orientation day. I'd been like a UVU employee for like 2 weeks. Like I was brand new at Utah Valley University. And during the orientation, a new freshman was walking by me. And he was like, "Are you Ben Schilaty?" And I said, "I am." And he said, "I love your podcast. It has changed my life. Thank you so much." And he said, "Can I give you a hug?" And I said, "Of course." So he gives me a hug, and then we talk for a little bit, and off he goes. So the next day, my supervisor pulls me aside, and she was like, "Ben, I got to tell you about what happened with that hug you gave that student." And my initial thought was, "Oh no, I'm in trouble," because I hugged a gay student, because I had been written up for supposedly flirting with a gay student at BYU, which had not happened. And so I was like, "Oh no, I'm in trouble." And what happened was one of the deans had seen this interaction and was like moved to tears, and then told my supervisor, like, "We are so lucky to have Ben. He is already serving our students." So I'd kind of gotten used to, I'm going to get in trouble for being gay, and then suddenly I was being like praised and thanked for the work I was doing. So I truly love BYU. It is one of my favorite places on the planet, but there were some hard things. Like I feel like I was viewed with suspicion by people who didn't know me. But for the most part, I had overwhelmingly positive experiences. And I would be thrilled to still be there. Like I didn't leave because I was unhappy or I was mistreated. You know, I left purely for professional reasons. And it worked out. Like I'm in a more like my profession has advanced since I left BYU, so it was all to the good. Um, but one thing that I was so careful about writing that post because I wanted to make sure that everything like was said correctly. And so I read through it a couple dozen times. So when I posted it, the stories in it were so I was so used to them, they kind of like lost their meaning almost. So I was like, is anyone going to care about this? Like, because I just like it had lost its meaning to me almost. And so I posted, then immediately people were like, oh my gosh, that's wild. Like I can't believe that happened. I was like, oh yeah, that was hard. You know, that was bad. And I was treated poorly from time to time. And so I didn't share that post because I wanted anyone to like be mad at the institution, but really I believe that sunlight is the best disinfectant. If we can let people know what problems there are, then we can work to fix those problems. And hopefully, in coming years, LGBTQ people at BYU won't feel like they're treated as a problem or with suspicion. We'll just be treated like anybody else.
I love that you said it many times, and I know you just wanted to get that point across, but it's the people who didn't know you. And I think that's so important because we so easily build up walls with people we don't understand, whether that be LGBTQ plus, whether that be a different race, whether that be a different religion, whether that be a different political stance. When we see someone who is different than what we are used to, it's just human nature to have some judgment about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's human nature and we are all guilty of it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's so important to get to know people.
100%.
Get to know people. If someone makes you a tiny bit uncomfortable, get to know them. That's a perfect invitation to hold up the mirror and be like, I need to get to know them better.
Yep, definitely. I agree 100%.
We just what happens is we have those little biases and then we connect with the people who have the same biases and we're like, and then those walls build and then they somehow become a horrible human because of something that's different that we don't understand.
Yeah. May I just share a quick story going off of that?
Yes,
So,
please.
a couple of months ago, I gave a talk in my ward, and I mentioned just in passing that I was gay. Like that wasn't like I wasn't like, hey, everyone, I'm gay, but it was an important part to the spiritual experience that I had had. And
Everyone
I
was probably
mentioned,
like, yes, Ben, we know.
I'm like, yes, queen. uh, and so I mentioned this book, and there was this new couple in my ward that's in their 50s, and they came up to me after, and the wife said, I would love to read your book. So I walked to her house after church and gave her a copy, and she said, I would love to just ask you questions when I finish reading. So I said, great. So a couple weeks later, I went over to their house. She had like a whole list of questions, and one of the first things she said, I feel like your book is a gateway drug. And I said, a gateway to what? And she didn't quite know, but as we talked about it, she said that she had just seen so many people who had come to really love and admire and respect LGBTQ people, and then they stepped away from the church. And it was evident that she was worried that, well, if I love gay people too much, then I might lose my testimony. And I think that's a really common experience. And it shouldn't have to be. Like there shouldn't be anything about loving, accepting, and respecting people that would cause us to like lose our testimony or doubt the reality of the restoration or God and Jesus. Because my experiences as a gay member of the church have strengthened my testimony, have caused me to go to my knees and to connect with God. But it hasn't always been easy. And so I 100% agree with you. We need to get closer to people. We need to hear their stories, but also stories make us think about things in ways that we hadn't thought about before, and that can be really scary to people. And so I just want to like acknowledge that hearing a story that's different from your own can be really hard, but it's also so important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Being uncomfortable causes us often to question, especially when we're uncomfortable and then we start going, oh, that makes sense. Oh, I have compassion for that. Oh, that hurt. That happened to you. Oh my gosh. And then we start to go, oh. And I think it's a beautiful path. Jared Halverson talks about it a lot. Just he talks about the creation fall atonement, which
Yes.
I love because we all fall, if you will, at some time in our lives. Most of us all fall a lot. I fall a lot. I fall a lot. But that fall is what leads us to atonement.
Mhm.
That fall is what leads us to Christ. That fall is what brings us to our knees. That question of, oh, how do I do this? How do I love and support my son and his amazing husband that I love so much? How do I invite people into our home? Because we do once a month, we have an LGBTQ plus gathering in our home. How do I love these people that I love so much and keep the covenants that I have made? Because I've made them. They're my covenants that I've made. That I I don't have to be like, you have to do exactly what I've done. You know, it's between me and the Lord. Dakota's walk is between him and the Lord. It's his walk. It's my walk. And we can walk together in a beautiful way that isn't separate. And I, for a long time, thought things had to be so separate, and they don't. As I get to know people again with different political views, different faith walks, I have lots of friends who belong to different religions. And as I sit with them and get to know with them and have conversations with them, I become better.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah. And what you're describing around it like is Zion, because Zion is the people of one heart and one mind. And how are we going to build Zion if we don't see what's in other people's hearts, if we don't understand what's in their mind? Like that's how we build Zion. Like, let me see your heart. Let me see what's going on in your brain. Like that's how we build Zion.
Yes.
Absolutely. Something that's coming to mind for me is when we are kind of nudged out of our comfort zone or completely ripped out of our comfort zone, either way, it is just an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity for us to neurologically and psychologically build new pathways and create a bigger picture of a more all-encompassing truth.
Mhm.
It in Because truth is so much bigger than any of our tiny little perspective. It's everything.
Yeah.
Everything is that is, and I think it's such a beautiful opportunity for growth whenever we are placed outside of our comfort zone, because I believe that's what we're here to do, is to grow, is to gain more more of a broad and eternal perspective, is to learn how to love one another, uh, while ha- developing deeper roots into um, what makes us who we are. And um, yeah, I don't know where else to go with that thought, so I'll just leave it there. But that's something that came to mind.
Yeah, totally.
I would love to hear a time when maybe either yourself or uh, either you yourself were stretched out of your comfort zone, or a time where you maybe helped somebody who could couldn't really see through the mess of everything, and how you either helped somebody bring them through that time, or how you yourself were able to move through that time.
Yeah, I'll talk first about people who've stretched me out of my comfort zone. So, I just find people fascinating. Like, I love to learn about people, and I think that also makes me a good therapist. Like, I'm just like naturally curious about people. Like, I'm super nosy and like want to know all the gossip and like what's going on in their brain. And sometimes I get reprimanded about it for like if I'm at dinner with friends, I'm like, oh, tell me about this, and people are like, stop, that's not polite to ask about that. But I really do care about people. And one experience that is like so outside of my experience is being transgender. Like I was assigned male at birth. Like I have always felt male. Like this is just that is not something I have ever considered or thought about, or like I've never felt that I wasn't male. And so coming to understand and getting to know trans people really made me think about things in a different way and expanded a lot of my understanding. And I read stories and I was like, you know what, this doesn't make sense to me. And initially I thought, well, maybe this might just be a mental illness. And maybe through therapy this could be corrected. And I realized like, oh, that's how I used to think about my own orientation too. And then I got to know a lot of trans people, and I asked them questions and heard their experiences. And that just opened my heart. And I thought, you know what? I just want to like, I felt compelled to just trust them and just like trust their experience. I have a very dear friend. We're very close, and they started using they them pronouns. And I'd already known them for years. And using they them pronouns for me, like linguistically, does not make a lot of sense. And they started using they them pronouns when I was in my late 30s, and by then, like my brain is solidified enough that building new neural pathways is hard. And so even now, like a couple years later, I still struggle to use they them pronouns when talking about this friend. Because I was used to using a different set of pronouns. And yet I try to do that, not because it makes sense to me, not because I super get their experience, even though I've asked about it and I've learned a lot from this dear friend, but because I trust them and I want to do the thing that matters to them. So that's the way that like I've been stretched, outside of my comfort zone. And sometimes it still is uncomfortable. I just want to use like pronouns that are used to like being more singular, that I used to use with this friend. But I'll strive to use they them. Um, a couple years ago, I was a temple worker in the Provo, Utah temple. I worked there for a couple of years, and it was an odd place to be a temple worker because most of the temple workers were either like just home from their missions or like retired people. And so like as a single man in my late 30s, it was like, who are you or why are you here? And everyone just assumed I was married and had kids. And so sometimes we would ask oh, like how many kids do you have? And I would say, oh, I don't have any children. Change of topic because I like didn't want to talk about being gay in the temple. Not that I felt it was inappropriate, but I didn't want anyone to say anything homophobic to me in the temple. But after a while, I was like, people would ask, I was like, no, I'm not married. And like, oh, are you looking? And I'm like, actually, no, I'm gay. I'm not attracted to women. And so that led to a number of really good conversations I had because in the temple sometimes there's downtime where you can talk. And I remember there's this man I got to be really, really good friends with who his youngest kid was a teenager. And so he was asking me questions about my experience, like asking about, how my parents saw me being LGBTQ. And I told a story about, my parents saying that they were on my side no matter what, and that if I need to leave the church and marry a man, like they would always, like they would be with me 100% in that decision, like they would honor my agency. And I told him that, and he said, I couldn't do that. He said, if my kid leaves the church, I could never say that was okay. I would expect my kid to stay on the covenant path and get married in the temple. Like I could not accept anything beyond that. And then we had to like go off to an assignment. So we did that. And then we came back like 20 minutes later and we sat down next to each other on this pew. And he was like, Ben, I've been thinking for the last 20 minutes that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And I realized I could never tell my kid what to do. Like my kid's gonna do what he wants to do, whether I like it or not. And and uh and he said, I want to be more like your parents. I was like, oh, that's so kind. But there were a number of times where I had conversations with these fellow temple workers that they just were not prepared for. Because not only did they not like know gay people often, but they didn't expect to have that conversation in the temple with a fellow temple worker. And so I saw a lot of like big eyes when I would come out to people, like a lot of shocked faces. But every time it led to really good conversations, and one conversation which wasn't necessarily the like I stretched someone, but like their own experience stretched them. This man who was a temple worker came up and talked to me, and he had an adult son who was gay and married to a man and had left the church. And he said, Ben, how do I show my son that I love him? Because I do, and I want him to know that I love him. And I didn't like, I'm not a parent, like I don't know what to tell him. So I don't remember what I said, but something that wasn't probably helpful. And then after I said whatever it was I said, that I don't remember, he said, I can't imagine how much God loves us. Divine love must be so powerful because I love my son so much. And if God loves him even more than I love him, I just can't even imagine what that is like. And he cried and like got really emotional as he shared this. And he like thanked me. He's like, thank you for teaching me how much God loves my son. I already do love him, and I just need to think of more ways that he can understand that, and I should just maybe tell him more often. I was like, great, I love that. But he was stretched because he was thinking and pondering, and I just happened to be the person he was bouncing an idea off of.
Yeah. What a great privilege you have in your career, and the fact that you're open and out, and with the podcast. You have such a great opportunity to talk to so many people.
Mhm. Yeah. I feel so
So
lucky.
many people who are all over the board when it comes to this issue. I love that.
Mhm. Yep. I've been so lucky to get to know so many people. And and the truth is I have not met one person that once you hear the story, you wouldn't love them. Like everyone is so lovable when you get to see their heart. Even people that might seem a little prickly at first.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I agree. When I was on my young mission, there was a sister, and she definitely had just the never smiling face. Like she never smiled. And she kind of scared me and intimidated me. And as I got to know her, she was the one that we went to her house every single P day to do laundry. She was the
Mm.
one that I loved being around because she was very kind. She was not smiley. She was not huggy. She wasn't like my kind of. I am so touchy feely and like hug you and love you and smile. And she wasn't that, but she was so kind and so wonderful. Um, Again, we just get to know people, get to know people, sit on their
Yep,
couch.
exactly.
Yeah.
How do you encourage clients to have difficult conversations with those that they disagree with?
Ooh.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation. So I work at Utah Valley University, like I said, and people might know it as the place where Charlie Kirk was shot. And it was a very traumatic experience for our campus, our community, and it was tough. And I had a student come in and talk to me because we that happened on a Wednesday, and then we didn't come back to school for another week until like the following Wednesday. And I had a student come into my office either that Monday or Tuesday of the next week and just share that he was kind of afraid to come back to class. And he told me that he started crying. He said, "I loved Charlie Kirk. I listened to his podcast. It was really meaningful to me. And I'm just like so sad that he died." And he said, "I don't know why I'm crying. Like I didn't even know him." And I explained parasocial relationships and how you don't have to know someone to feel like you have a relationship. And then he told me that he had told his wife that he was sad about Charlie Kirk dying, and then his wife kind of like bit his head off, like, "Why would you like Charlie Kirk? Like he's such an awful person." And so he hadn't talked about this with anyone for like since that happened, like for days. And so he was just like holding this grief on his own. And then he told me that he was afraid to come back to class because some of the students in the program had started a petition to keep Charlie Kirk from speaking on campus, and had been like sending that around like the classes a lot. And so he knew that a lot of his classmates disliked Charlie Kirk. And he's like, "I don't know what I can say. Like, they're not going to respect me." And I said, "If they can't respect you for liking Charlie Kirk, they're not going to be good social workers." So this is something we had to talk about. So in the class he was in, we all sat around a circle on the first day of class. And I didn't say who he was, but I mentioned that, one of the students was kind of afraid to come back to class. And so everyone just kind of shared what they were feeling. But then no one like addressed this issue I had brought up. And so then I said, "There's a student in this class who was kind of afraid to come. What would you want to say to the student? What would you want them to know?" And then this girl raised her hand and she said, "I'm the person who started that petition." She said, "I did not like Charlie Kirk, but he did not deserve to die. And then she got emotional. She said, "I am so sad that my starting that petition made someone in this class feel unwelcome. And I'm not sorry I started that petition, but I am sorry that I hurt a person in this class." And like a tear came out of my eyes. She said that, and this kid who hadn't said who he was like, "Hey, it was me. I was the person who's sad that Charlie Kirk died and that was afraid to come." And then he shared a little bit, and then this other woman in class said, who had started the petition. She said, "Well, what was it about Charlie Kirk that you liked?" And she said it so sincerely. And he said, "Well, I'm Christian and I'm a father." And he talked a lot about being a Christian dad. And I just really resonated with that. And she was like, "I can see why that would be so meaningful to you." And then they had a good conversation. Then when the class was over, like they hugged, people were crying. It was really beautiful. And so I think for us to have these difficult conversations, first of all, we need to be willing to say, like, "I have been hurt. Like this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm experiencing." And then we need the other person to say, I acknowledge that hurt. I see that hurt. And that can be really hard to do and really scary. And this is why it's so hard for people to come out to friends and family and loved ones, because here they're offering this vulnerability and they don't know how that vulnerability is going to be received.
Yeah.
And so it's the same when it comes to other things in our lives, like just like political opinions we have, or beliefs about things, or even like what we like and dislike. Just being really respectful. I remember having a conversation with someone about the last presidential election, and I asked him, well, help me understand like why you voted for this person that I chose not to vote for. And as he shared, I was like, those are valid reasons. Like those aren't the reasons I would choose, but I understand where you're coming from. And I heard this political commentator on the news a couple weeks ago, and he was saying he was talking about he's like I am a far right Republican, and then he mentioned someone on the far left, and he said I disagree with them vehemently about a lot of things, but if you were to line up all the issues we would talk about, we probably agree on 80%.
Mm.
And he said, and that 20% is worth fighting for, but it's not worth, but that 20% isn't worth forgetting the 80% and losing relationships over it.
It's not worth hating for.
Exactly. And I thought that was so wise. Like, yeah, let's fight for the differences of things that matter, but really in the end, like we want prosperity, we want peace, we want people to thrive. Like these deep things are what we want. When it comes to LGBTQ topics, like what do I want in my life? Like I want to be with my family. I want people to love. I want to make connections. I want to make a difference in the world. I think I want peace in my life. I want what most people want. And the way I might want that is different than traditionally what people might see people would want in this world. Like, a man would want to marry a woman, and that's just not what I want. And that can be jarring for people, but in the end, like my heart's not that different from theirs.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought that whole incident up with your students, and
Mm-hmm.
because that, I mean, we're in Spokane, Washington, but of course that hit the news. And of course, because it's UVU campus, and lots of members of the church are there. We have my stepdaughter lives really close to there. I have grandchildren who go to school close to there. It hit home. Hit home for a lot of people, and just no matter where you stood with that, no matter where you stood with that, whether you liked him or didn't like him, we still can be unified in the fact that someone tragically died and a family was impacted.
Yeah. Yep.
And not only a family, a campus, students, so many, a
Mm-hmm.
community, a town was impacted. Like, and we can have compassion for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's really why we started this podcast, honestly, is part of it was I was still serving in Kenya with my husband on a mission, and we'd watch the news here, and it was just the division, the divisiveness was just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're like, what's happening? We were scared to come home. I'm like, the world's gonna blow up. The US is gonna just civil war is gonna happen. And so just in my own heart, I'm like, Heavenly Father, what difference can I make, in this world that is so divided, and felt the spirit to talk to Dakota about doing this. And
Mhm.
so far, all of our guests we've been talking about LGBTQ plus, because of course that hits home with us and the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints, because that's our world. But we hope to in the future have people of different faiths, people of different races, of different, that difference that sometimes causes division and doesn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For
Because our
sure.
goal is that I mean, like our title, that we walk together. We walk together. We don't have to walk the same to walk together. We can all do our own funky thing, but we
Yep.
still can walk together, because that's the whole point, right? Isn't the whole point to become like our Savior, Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
That's the whole point, is to become like him. And
Yep.
he walked with others
Mhm.
that he was criticized for walking with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Ben, I'm curious. I mean, you've already spoken to this, but I guess in summary, how has your walk of compassion and seeking understanding, how has that blessed your life?
Oh my gosh. When you look at someone else's life with kindness and compassion, that just like you start seeing yourself the same way too.
Mm.
And there's this, I think it's in Proverbs, a verse that says, cast your bread upon the water and it comes back to you again, something like that.
Mhm.
Uh, I might be making that up.
I'm not a great scriptorian.
Yeah. But the idea
Read
like,
almost every day, but memorize, no.
but and there's this teaching in a lot of religions, like in Hinduism, it's karma. What you put out into the world comes back to you.
Mhm.
And so the way, like when I am kind and generous to people, it allows me to be kind and generous with myself. And there's that verse in the Sermon on the Mount where Christ says, judge not that ye be not judged. And the most judgmental people are the ones who are hardest on themselves, because if they're judging others, they're going to be judging themselves too. And so getting to know other people's stories, getting to see them and hear them and experience their life as best I can, has really opened up for me like a broader spectrum of love for myself and understanding for myself.
Absolutely. That's incredible. Something that I always go back to and think of with Christ saying, the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. Um, we always think, oh, that just means to love everybody else, right? And then we forget the yourself part, because if we are if we are loving others and then ignoring ourselves, then we're not really loving others as ourselves. So we need to include ourselves into that equation. And like you were saying, what we reap we sow, or what we sow we reap rather, and that law of karma and what we put out will come back to us. I love that entire concept of recognizing that we really are all the same on some level, and we all are deserving of love and compassion and forgiveness and kindness. And we all want those same things. We all want peace. We all want to um, have a beautiful life, have a beautiful existence. And when we are able to extend that to others, I 100% agree that it does come back to us. And when we are able to, and also on the flip side of that, when we're able to forgive ourselves and when we're able to love ourselves and when we are able to have compassion for ourselves and let go of things that are harmful to us, it is much easier for us to do the same for others. And it's just this beautiful cycle, or it can be a very harmful cycle if we are on the flip side of that, and if we are damning to ourselves, then we become more hurtful to others.
Yeah.
And when we're angry towards others, like you said, oftentimes we're really just angry at ourselves. It's kind of just this mirror that we hold up, that we see in others what we see in ourselves,
Yeah.
and I think that's really something important that all of us could recognize more fully. So I really appreciate that you shared that. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Um, in final summary, I really am curious what you would like others to gain from hearing about your personal experience.
Yeah. I do have a copy of my book right here. Oh, I don't. I'll just quote it for you. So I wrote this book about being a gay Latter-day Saint, and my biggest fear in writing this book was that people would then say, "Oh, Ben's got this gay Latter-day Saint thing figured out. Everyone should be like him." And so at the beginning of my book, I have this analogy where I say like I wear glasses and I do wear glasses. Today I'm wearing contacts, so I'm not wearing glasses. But telling someone to be like me would be like taking the glasses off of my face and putting them on someone else's face. Like what that would do is just give them blurry vision and a headache. Like we all have a unique prescription that is personalized. And so I tell people like, don't tell people to be like me. Help them be like their best self. And so with that same fear in mind, on the second last page of my book, I wrote this line. I said, I have one parting request. If you are tempted to give this book to an LGBTQ friend or loved one, I would ask you to resist that temptation and pause for a moment. Instead of giving them my story, would you invite them to share, to tell you theirs? And so I hope that anyone who here, I hope that my friend in my ward said, like, my book is a gateway drug. I hope that this can be like an easy entry for someone into the LGBTQ Latter-Day Saint space. And then once they've stepped into the space, then they can talk to their friend or their neighbor or their uncle or their cousin or their mom and hear that person's story. Because the truth is, like, I've got lots of friends. I know a lot of people, but I don't know most of the listeners, and my story isn't the story that matters. The story that matters is the people that you know and that you care about. Those are the stories that really matter. So I hope what anyone will get from my story is an excitement and an invitation to talk to the people, the LGBTQ people that they know and love in their lives, so they can hear their stories.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And how do you think that we can all overall just be more unified on our walk together in life?
Yeah. I think some of the phrases I've learned to say and like mean are just like ask genuine questions and like sincere questions. And then when I hear the answer, even if it isn't an answer that makes sense to me, what I would do to just say, thank you for sharing that. I trust you. And just like to really trust that, like, I know that they're doing the right thing for them. And or at the very least, they're trying to do the best thing for them. And I don't need to know what that thing is. That's like that's for them. And so I think like not only saying it, but actually believing, like, I trust you to know what's best for you in your life.
Right.
I love that.
Right. I love that too. We all need to be. I need to be better on that. So thank you.
I think every human does.
Me
It's a
that I
human
need to be
thing.
better about that and trusting people in their own journey, whatever that looks like. Just to trust them, because when you trust them, you open your heart to love them.
Mhm.
So
100%.
I love that. Thank you very much. Thanks for being our guest. We really appreciate having you here. And I will put like the name of your book in the notes. We'll put all that and include all that. So
Absolutely. Ben, thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate having you. And thank you all so much for joining us once again this week on I'll Walk With You. And until next time, have a great day.
thank you.